My name is Lex, and this week on Spidey Signals, me and my co host Alex discuss the first half of season 2 of Greg Weisman and Victor Cook's The Spectacular Spider Man, supervillain personas, and anarcho primitivism. Get ready to arrive in the speed of time, because it's time for Spidey Signals. Welcome back to Spidey Signals, the podcast where two guys with the same name talk about Spider-Man. I'm Lex.
And I'm Alex.
Last week, we capped off season 1 of The Spectacular Spider-Man, and we enjoyed it even more than the first half. I think we could both agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it was weighed on the second end with more, I don't know, fan-pleasing stuff. Not necessarily fan service, but just more, I don't know. Here, we know they're going to like this. It's good.
More better stuff.
Precisely.
And that continues here with this this second season.
Mm-hmm. Right off the bat,
Exactly.
it starts good and just
Oh
keeps
yeah.
continuing to be good.
The quality continues. It doesn't dip or anything as far as I've seen. But
Mm-hmm.
let's just jump right into it.
For sure.
This week we are talking about the first 7 episodes of the second season of The Spectacular Spider-Man. These episodes were released from June 22nd to July 27th of 2009. The series was created by Greg Weisman and Victor Cook. These episodes were directed by Jennifer Coyle, Kevin Altieri, and Mike Goguen. I hope I'm saying that right. They were written by Kevin Hops, Matt Wayne, Andrew Robinson. I'm going to make a correction here. I said Andy Jant in the last episode. I was wrong. It's Randy Jant with an R.
Mm.
And Nicole Dubbock. If I'm saying that right as well. Our cast is Josh Keaton as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, Lacey Chabert as Gwen Stacy, Vanessa Marshall as Mary Jane Watson, Peter McNichol as Otto Octavius / Dr. Octopus, Xander Berkeley as Quentin Beck / Mysterio, and Benjamin Diskin as Eddie Brock / Venom. Yeah, we don't really have any personal experiences to talk about here,
Mm-hmm.
because this is both of our first time watching this. So, Alex, you want to take us through the plot of these episodes?
I am very happy to. These are some solid episodes here. We begin the first episode of season 2 with what turns out to be a dream sequence. I have kind of an affinity for knowing when something is hinky in that regard in media. I don't know. More often than not, if something is like trying to trick you into thinking, "Oh, this is real," I don't know. I feel like almost anybody can tell when stuff's a dream.
You're just a
Uh,
real savvy guy.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's my one superpower. But yeah, it does turn out to be a dream sequence. It's winter time, and in this dream, Peter is out on patrol talking to himself as Spider-Man, mulling over the kiss that Gwen gave him on Thanksgiving before running off to join her father and leave him behind for a bit. In this dream, he's suddenly attacked by Venom again, which confuses him, seeing as, he thinks this is real life for a moment. Venom in this dream urges him to join with the symbiote again and begins latching onto him with tendrils and enveloping him, causing Spider-Man to fall off the building screaming, which wakes Peter up wrapped in his blankets. This brief little, intro, it is a dream, but it is also winter outside. I don't think there's enough Spider-Man media that deals with how impractical his suit is in the cold, and they touch on that a lot in this episode.
I hope they talk about it in No Way Home, because I know that there's some part of that movie that takes place around Christmas time
Mhm.
from the set photos that have been leaked. So hopefully they do something with that. But yeah, I really like all these winter episodes.
Very good set pieces, very good. They really played up the Halloween stuff in the previous season, so I really like that holidays as the passage of time that we see over this part of the season as well. Really cool stuff. Um, After waking up from this, Peter wants to be sure and like assure himself that everything is fine and good and normal. He visits the ESU dorm where Eddie is supposed to be, only to find that Eddie has gotten all of his belongings and left. He's essentially just, vanished, packed up and left, which is not great because he knows Peter's secret identity. Um,
Not
at
ideal.
home, yeah, really not ideal. At home, Peter is lamenting the cold weather that we mentioned, preparing a to-do list, and finds Aunt May in the process of making pancakes. And he thinks this is her pushing herself too hard. He scolds her a little bit and attempts to take over before once again proving that he can't cook at all. Uh, Spider-Man's a microwave dinner kind of guy, not a chef.
A ramen noodle type beat.
Precisely. Um, At school, Peter attempts to talk to Gwen. It doesn't go well. Just a lot of awkward silence interrupted by the school bell. Um, from there, we cut to the city docks. And it really this season does not take long at all to get right into the thick of it with giving us what we want. We get Mysterio like minutes into this first episode.
And not only that,
Ve-
we get a Stan Lee cameo right before.
Yeah, I have that in my notes. I just didn't mark down when that happened. It looks like him. It's his voice. It's at the docks, right? That's where he is.
Yeah, my notes literally just say Stan Mysterio.
All I wrote down was Stan the Man. I should really get better with my notes, damn. But yeah, fun little Stan Lee cameo. This is 2008, so it's kind of in film wise, at least. There were the occasional animated Stan Lee cameos, like in the animated series, stuff like that. But more culturally, like at this point, people knew, oh, Stan Lee cameos. They were in all the Spider-Man movies, all the X-Men movies. Even like there were only maybe one or two MCU movies out at this point, maybe even just Iron Man, right?
Yeah,
Summer of
this was 2000.
2008.
This was 2009. This was 2009. So this was the year
Ah,
of. I think this was like right after. This might have been the year of the first, the Incredible Hulk, the Edward Norton one.
sure. Yeah. So Stanley cameos were very much already an established thing in like pieces of Marvel media outside of the comics. But
Yeah,
it's,
I'm surprised
it's
that they. I'm surprised that
good.
they waited so long. They waited until season 2 to drop the Stan Lee cameo.
Weird, but it's here. It's not gratuitous either. He's there and then he's not. It's great. A shipment of advanced computer equipment meant for ESU is being attacked by Mysterio. And I love the suit in this, by the way. Great. I really do like the Far From Home suit. It's a great interpretation, but this is a great, like, I don't know, great moving
Classic.
comic suit.
I like that he has like a big. He has the helmet, but there's obviously like the fog on the inside, but there's like sort of little beads where you can tell that where his eyes are.
hmm
Like you can sort of tell that there's a person's head in there. And also he has like this big like puffy turtleneck that he has around his fishbowl that I think is fun.
His voice is very, it reminds me a lot of Dr. Orpheus from the Venture Brothers and Dr. Membrane from Invader Zim. It's very somewhere in the middle of those two.
Yeah, I love. We'll talk about it later, where he like summons like a spirit dragon and like little gremlin things that explode. He's like basically a summoner.
hmm It's,
He does a funny wizard voice and he casts magic spells and shoots little gremlins at you, and it's great. I love it.
yeah, no, it does not disappoint. I know you're the resident Mysterio guy. I knew you'd
Resident
probably
Mysterio enjoyer.
I know you'd probably be very happy with this take on the character.
It's very good.
Mysterio proclaims that his intent is to save humanity from the evils of technology through his mastery of the arcane arts. Very Unabomber Mysterio
Yeah.
here.
I love fucking Ted Kaczynski Mysterio.
You've received a package from Mysterio.
He's like if Ted Kaczynski was really into David Copperfield. That's Mysterio in this show.
Yeah, it's a weird motivation, but it's fine, I guess. It works for the character.
Especially when it's obviously realized later on that it's just an act that he's putting on. It's very funny.
Yeah, layers to this stuff. He proclaims all this stuff, and then he causes himself and the shipping crate to vanish in a cloud of green smoke. Very Mysterio. Uh, so Peter loses track of him. End of that little fight sequence. we go to school, presumably the next day, with Peter and Gwen's awkwardness making Liz Allen very mad, who begs for Peter's help and tutelage once again in order to kind of corner him for herself. They do a lot more with the Liz and Peter dynamic in this season. It was there in like the first season, but it's a lot more fleshed out here. It goes places.
Yeah, they put a lot of work into it, and they keep teasing the Peter and Gwen relationship, and it still hasn't happened yet as of
Hmm.
over halfway through the season, because they're not an even amount of episodes per season. So I'm excited to see where they go with this. But we're running out of time here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's only so many episodes, and Gwen Stacy's just not allowed to be happy and alive. You get one or the other.
It's not the way it works.
Mysterio attacks an armored vehicle, summoning a monster to intimidate the guards, but is pretty quickly confronted by Spider-Man. Mysterio really quickly bests Spider-Man in this fight. Like, I was surprised how quickly, actually.
Yeah, he casts a sleeping spell, and then summons his little spirit dragon, and it like knocks the armored truck into the water, and Spider-Man has to go
Uh-huh.
save him. But the truck and stuff has been stolen.
Precisely. Yeah, the sequence where the vehicle's thrown into the river, it's really neat. Spider-Man saves the driver, but he catches a cold from the depth of everything. Again, and completely impractical suit for winter crime fighting in New York. Very, very sheer, I imagine.
Yeah, I don't know if it's this episode or the next one where he talks about how he would needs to like go by thermals because
Hmm.
if he wears like a big sweater underneath it, it doesn't look good at all.
Yeah, it is in this one, I believe. It's on his to-do list, I think. It's one of the things.
Yeah.
Uh, God, I can't remember. I have it in my notes here. Is this where is this the fight where Mysterio attempted to kill him with a scimitar, or is that later?
Yeah, this is the scene where he like summons a scimitar, a curved swords, and tries to fucking kill Spider-Man.
I actually sat up in my seat and said to my partner who was watching with me, "Is he about to execute Spider-Man with a scimitar?"
I feel like Mysterio would be a lot more effective if he just like immediately went to summoned a fucking scimitar and tried to chop him and chop his head off instead of like doing all the weird shit he normally does. It'd be much more effective.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. It was goofy, but it was goofy enough to I don't know. I liked it a lot. It didn't take me out of it or anything. Once the vehicle is recovered, the Daily Bugle blames the theft of its contents on Spider-Man, of course, infuriating Peter. However, Liz makes a remark that magicians rely on misdirection to fool their audiences, while at the table behind them, Gwen watches forlornly and kind of confides her troubles to Mary Jane. They bring up this misdirection line a lot throughout the rest of the episode. Like the show doesn't do a whole lot of like, oh, I just remembered I'm watching a kids show, but there is that in this first episode where they drop that misdirection line like 4 or 5 times, I think, and it's like,
Well,
okay, yeah,
you
we
gotta
get it.
hammer it
Oh,
home because we're watching this show in the age of streaming services where there
hmm.
are no commercial breaks, and you get distracted by a commercial for fucking Frosted Flakes or some shit, and then you're like, oh wait, what? Sorry, what was I doing?
Hmm. Hmm. Elsewhere, Dr. Connors, Norman Osborn, and the science professor of Midtown High welcome Dr. Miles Warren to the faculty.
Miles Warren,
Uh,
who is the science professor's brother.
mhm. I was not expecting Miles Warren in this show, but here he is. He's the Jackal eventually, right? Am
Yes,
I
he's the
correct on
Jackal,
that?
and I don't know if he's going to show up as the Jackal in this show. Uh,
Right, because that's mostly
something,
a college thing, I think, right?
yeah, something tells me he's not really going to. It's gonna end up being like an unresolved thread of
Hmm.
Miles Warren. But he like, especially later on in the season, we'll get into it in the later episodes. He like fucking is immediately like super evil. He like doesn't
Yeah.
give a shit.
There's some talk of funding, and I made a note here that Norman like looks really, really smug as soon as the word funding comes up, and I thought that was funny.
His ears
Um,
perk up when he hears any sort of financial discussion.
Martha Connors is lamenting Eddie's disappearance, and
Martha.
the lack of help with him around. Um, where, with that being said, Norman and Curtis have this little moment where they essentially goad her into reinstating Peter and his internship. Really great little everyone deserves a second chance moment from Dr. Lizard.
It's really funny because it's just her that's holding out on it. Like Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Connors is like totally fine with it,
Norman's
but
like,
she's
Peter,
like, no, we're not letting this fucking dipshit in.
Norman loves Peter more than his own son, and it isn't going. You know who could be a real asset around here? My son Harry. I know Peter's great. You should get Peter back.
You know, Dr. Connors had his life saved by Peter, so he's not too upset, even though he doesn't know it was Peter.
Right, right. Norman is interrupted by a phone call from Oscorp, uh, at Oscorp, Mysterio is attempting to raid more technology for his Kaczynskian, motives. Spider-Man arrives, as he does, and Mysterio summons a horde of the aforementioned goblins. I had imps in my notes. I think I said gremlins as well.
Yeah, I think I called them gremlins.
Yeah, a lot of things work for them. They're
Little
great.
little flying ghouls.
Just purple devil creatures. I love them.
Little green
Um,
ghouls.
Mysterio summons a horde of these to distract Spider-Man while he makes off with the technology. Throughout the fight, webbing them and slamming them into each other, Spider-Man realizes that these gremlins are actually advanced robots and latches onto, a bunch of them, smashes them into each other. Very, there's only so many ways to tell he's fighting things that are robots, but they look like something else story, like, the drone sequences and everything from Far From Home. But, this does it well.
Yep.
Not, yeah, great immersion. Um, Mysterio vanishes once again, returns to his lair, an abandoned prop house where Spider-Man tracks him to. Mysterio acknowledges that his magic is a mix of acting, technology, illusions, and one by one, Spider-Man defeats a gauntlet of traps, and eventually a horde of non-illusion robotic Mysterio clones are
Yeah,
summoned.
it's an awesome Spider Sense moment, and this fight is
Oh
really
yeah,
fun where he has to fight the like 80 robot Mysterios. My question is like, where do you get the fucking funding for this shit?
funding? What? Huh?
Fu- did, did somebody say funding?
There's a point during this fight where I swear to Christ, like the exact Godzilla scream sound effect plays. Am I crazy or did you hear that too?
I don't remember that.
Because I rewound it and my partner heard it as well. I don't remember the exact moment, but I maybe it's from his like dragon creature that he like floats around on. But I swear to God, they used like the actual copyright like Godzilla screech at some point. If Brian were here, Brian would know. Tune in a few weeks when Brian's here. I'll ask him
Probably.
then.
I don't know.
Spider-Man eventually confronts the real Mysterio and disables all the rest of the robots. And he's unmasked. Well, the fishbowl shattered. To reveal him as none other than Quentin Beck, the chameleon's former accomplice, who Spider-Man does not recognize or like acknowledge or remember, I guess is better.
It's so funny that he just doesn't remember him. He's like, yeah, that guy.
There's so many different ways to tell Mysterio stories, and sometimes there's only so many ways to tell Mysterio stories. I really like the "you don't know who I am" as opposed to like the Far From Home, "oh, everybody knows who I am." It's great. Uh, Good inverse there.
Yeah, and I mean, in Far From Home, nobody remembered who he was, because he was like some mook that worked for Tony Stark.
Sure, yeah. Uh, Man, I'm sorry. I know this is the the spectacular episode, but goddamn, Far From Home's really good.
Yeah, fuck, yeah, good ass movie.
Returning home after all of this is said and done, and Mysterio has been arrested, Peter is going over his unresolved to-do list, realizing he hasn't done really anything on it at all, before catching Aunt May at the stove again, this time cooking eggs. Aunt May kind of pokes fun at him and notices his cold, and, great little Peter and Aunt May sequence moment here. Before giving him a letter from the Daily Bugle that contains an exclusive freelance contract and an advance payment. Not, really used to near positive endings with Spider-Man stories, so this is very,
Secure
very
the
pleasant.
bag.
Mhm. Peter makes plans to call Gwen and tell her the good news, as well as have a much-needed discussion about what's going on. But he is interrupted from a phone call from Norman Osborn, who is a presumed billionaire enjoying a dinner of one single boiled egg.
Yeah, he's eating a boiled egg. He's eating like a hard boiled egg at his desk with his like a douchebag Bluetooth headset in. And
Yeah.
he's like, yes, Peter. Imagine if you were trying
I
to talk to someone eating a hard boiled egg. That would be like horrible.
He does that during all his conference calls, and they're like, "Oh fuck, I don't want to call Osborne. He's just gonna eat eggs into the microphone, and I can't say shit because he'll fire me."
It's an intimidation tactic.
I didn't realize it was hard boiled at first, and I thought it was just a raw egg on his desk, and I felt really stupid. Um, but the phone call is not to talk about his egg dinner. It is to inform him that not only, is he riding the high from this Daily Bugle thing, but he has been reinstated as the Connors lab assistant. And Norman offers his services as Peter's mentor, which just sounds super weird to me, just out of the blue. Like, I just wanted to call you and let you know that I want to teach you and I want to be like a father to you, Peter. Goodbye. Okay.
Yes.
Peter reluctantly agrees to meet with him. While all this is happening, back at the prop house, Phineas Mason meets with Beck, who had hidden and let an android be arrested in his place. Mason scolds Beck for his arrogance and places a phone call to the who turns out to be the overarching antagonist of this half of the season, the Master Planner,
Oh yeah,
who
baby.
informs him that everything has all gone, get this, according to plan.
There's like a lot. There's a line a couple episodes later, I think, in episode 3, yeah, where Mysterio is talking to Spider-Man, and he's like, "Think maybe the Master Planner has a master plan."
And that ties up the first episode of our second season here.
Yeah, it's really cool that they've done Master Planner, especially since we're talking about that exact arc later on this season as the penultimate episode,
Hmm.
and obviously we'll get more into it in the upcoming episodes.
For sure. From there, we go to our second episode, Destructive Testing. Uh, it starts not in New York, but in the African savannah, where Sergei Kravenov is confronting a rhinoceros, which is mad with fever. And there's a great little sequence where he essentially just subdues and takes it down with his bare hands. Great way to establish, Craven's strength and agility, animal control, blah blah blah. Uh, I'm not as familiar with Craven the Hunter as a character than I am with a lot of villains, but I like this version of the character. He's pretty serviceable, I guess. It's nothing blaringly wrong with him. I'm when it comes to Spider-Man villains, it's more memorable to get them wrong, I think. A
Yeah,
la
it's
Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2, that kind of thing.
I again, this is another villain that we're going to talk about. Craven, I really like Craven in this show,
Hmm.
uh, but they like with Doctor Connors, I feel like they do at least at the start give him a lot of dignity. Uh, and I am excited to talk about Craven's Last Hunt, which we will be talking about immediately after we finish this program.
Hmm. Absolutely. Um, so we were introduced to Craven. There's a little fake out where you think he's being attacked by a lion, only to be revealed to be his pet Gulyadkin. I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah, he has a
Uh,
fucking lion that he keeps in his car.
at first, during this fake out, when I thought before we knew this lion was allied to him, I thought he was gonna kill it and make his costume out of it because he isn't wearing his goofy Craven the Hunter outfit yet.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was thinking that too. I'm like, what's gonna happen? And then what happens in this episode happens, and I'm like, oh.
Craven meets up with his lover Calypso, who reveals that their American benefactor, whoever that is, has requested Sergei's services in hunting the Spider-Man. Uh, Sergei, who is delighted at the thought of a worthy challenge, accepts this. And from there, we do cut back to New York, where Peter is in his biology exam, and once again makes an attempt to talk to Gwen about things, capital T. But Liz interrupts, and Gwen is left without him. Later in the day at the lab, Peter is thanking Dr. Connors for the second chance that he's received to, be the lab assistant, hang around. Uh, And from there, we are introduced to Miles Warren's lab assistant, Deborah Whitman. Martha, I even gave myself a second there in case you needed to do your thing. Martha inquires if they know where Eddie Brock disappeared to. No one.
Martha.
There it is. There it is.
Gotta keep you on your toes.
Absolutely, you did. Oh God. Gwen is worried that Eddie may have been attacked by Venom, or even if she doesn't know those words specifically, she's worried something might have happened to him. All she knows is that 1 second Eddie was there, the next she kind of blacked out, and now she's tied up to the redacted Thanksgiving parade floats, the New York Unity Day, whatever.
If I was a super genius like Gwen Stacy, I would try to put like 2 and 2 together, but I guess not.
It's really weird how Eddie Brock and Venom were at the same place, and Spider-Man and Peter Parker were too. But whatever, I don't know.
I don't know, man. I'm trying to play the saxophone over here.
Yeah, Gwen is worried that Venom may have had something to do with Eddie's disappearance or something like that. Miles Warren enters, gushing over Dr. Connor's research on lizards and how it overlaps with his own research on mammals. Curtis gets, weird and immediately declares that line of research is a dead end and it's embarrassment and don't bring it up again.
Like you said, he gets weird.
He does get weird. Well, like, it's understandable. It makes me wonder, like, how much Miles knew at that exact moment in time. Like, did Curtis go, oh, hey, by the way, over drinks, I had this incident a few months ago where I became a hulking lizard man and almost ate my son.
This
It's no
man is
big
getting
deal.
weird.
But yeah, it's a dead end and an embarrassment. Do not look into the lizard type replication. Don't go fucking with that, please. That evening, Spider-Man is swinging around, patrolling, mulling whether to date Liz or Gwen. Classic Peter Parker shit. Unaware that Sergei is tracking and watching him, Sergei kind of tackles him out of the air mid-web sling and ambushes him and just about brings and takes him down. Really fun fight sequence here. I don't have it in my notes chronologically here. Is this the planetarium type? No, the museum fight sequence.
That doesn't
In
happen.
the episode or not.
The planetarium doesn't happen until like episode 6.
I misspoke. I meant the Museum of like the Natural History one. I think that's the second fight in this episode.
That's the second fight. Yes, this first Craven fight happens just out in the street.
Right. A lot of times these episodes tend to like center around maybe one fight, but there's two really quick ones in this one, which good variety. This one's super quick, and Sergei just about has Peter pinned down, but Peter does eventually beat him in the fight, stating that while Sergei may be the ultimate hunter in superpowered New York City, he's a bit out of his league. He leaves him hanging by his ankles from a street lamp for people to point and guffaw at, which is
people are like, you idiot, you big idiot.
Oh my god, it is like the ultimate Spider-Man embarrassment.
Imagine, you work really hard. You're coming in. You're hunting this guy. You're like super vain and proud, and then like this little like 17-year-old shithead just strings you up by your feet, and these people these guys with fucking Mets hats on come over and laugh at you.
10 years later, they would have been all over Snapchat with it.
How embarrassing.
Craven does eventually free himself from this position and reunites with Calypso and Gulyadkin. He's torn off a sample of Spider-Man's costume, a little swatch of it, and I think it was with one of his spears, and he uses it to track him over New York, eventually and ultimately leading him to ESU's science lab. He drops in and confronts Miles.
Miles, who is very, very calm about a guy who jumps in through a skylight with a live lion.
Hmm. Yeah, he doesn't go, get the fuck out of my building. He goes, oh, wow, cool lion. That's great. That looks awesome.
He's like, "Do you want to buy superpowers from me?"
Yeah, Sergey is demanding that he be given Spider-Man powers, or powers in general, I guess.
Yeah, he
Uh,
he wants powers because he wants to be even with Spider-Man. And Miles is like, Spider-Man paid for his powers, which is
mhm.
not true. He just makes shit up on the fly, which he's very good at apparently.
Yeah, no, this is
Uh,
he's a great piece of shit.
and he ends up helping out Craven.
Right. He was doing forbidden research furthering Dr. Connor's lizard juice formula. And he was kind of out loud talking to himself about how he needed live test subjects, and here comes this giant man going, "Shoot me full of juice."
And here comes a live test subject right now with a lion through the skylight.
Hmm. Warren suggests a lot of money for the procedure, and when Sergey threatens him and asks him why he shouldn't just, kill him, uh, it's a really quick conversation. He's like, "No, it would just be in your best interest to pay me. It's not,
Yeah, and he
no big
like he
deal."
like pulls behind his lab coat, and you could see a fucking like revolver he keeps in his pants. Like he's
Yeah.
got the strap on him at all
Oh,
times.
I guarantee you Curtis does not have one of those. Maybe Martha does. But
Like I'm so interested in seeing what his deal is. I'm gonna be
mhm,
really mad if they just never follow up with it. I feel like they won't, just because of there's a lot of stuff going on in this
right.
season.
I don't get the
Uh,
feeling we're gonna see this man wearing a goofy jackal costume.
but God, I want to know what is up with this guy that he fucking keeps a gun on him at all times.
He used to be like a crack dealer or something before he turned to super science.
In 2008 New York, where gun laws are like super strict.
The housing crisis affected people very differently, Lex. It's not something we would understand.
Miles Warren became a pimp.
At Midtown High's football game, Peter tests out his new camera, and Liz flirts with him. It's, whole little sequence. Some of the other cheerleaders deride her for spending time with Peter, being flirtatious with him. The Mustangs go on to win this game, but Flash suffers a pretty severe knee injury, leg break, throwing the
Yeah,
winning pass.
his knee gets fucked up, and all those cheerleaders made fun of Liz for hanging out for being with Peter. But they didn't see him in that black T-shirt that we saw him in. They didn't see how
Yeah,
fucking shredded he
it's
was.
very true, which nobody seems to remember later when, the question comes up of whether, Peter has anything to do with Spider-Man. Not one person goes, "Hey, yeah, remember he was super jacked when he wore that one shirt."
Well, you know how some high school kids are. They go to the gym all the time.
Peter's like, "I was a muscle shirt. I'm compensating. Please believe me." At the ESU lab later, Sergey is paying Warren half up front, threatening to sick the lion on him if he's still dissatisfied with the results. Warren is infusing Sergey with a mixture of lion, leopard, and cheetah DNA, and it essentially turns him into like Lion-O, like a werewolf Lion-O.
He gets turned into a furry.
Yeah,
He turns into a lion man,
a cheetah man, if you
which
will.
it would, yeah, Cheetah Men 2 for the NES. I don't remember if this might be a thing in the Ultimate comics. I feel like
I read Ultimate and it doesn't ring a bell. Maybe.
it's been in the comics before.
Oh, sure. It's this almost reads as Goofy. This
The fact that
character.
I can't remember it makes me almost think that like the idea of Craven being turned into a lion man is a this show original to this show. And if it is, that's kind of a genius idea, even though
Sure.
he looks very silly. He looks like a
Yeah.
giant furry trying to kill Spider-Man. It's very funny.
The idea itself isn't bad. I think the execution of it is just a little bordering on goofy. It's not as scary as the idea should read, I think. He looks very, very silly. He looks like Lion-O.
It's like one of those old Silver Age Superman comics where Lois Lane gets turned into like a gorilla or some shit.
Is that real?
That's gotta be. There was this probably is something like that.
I'm sorry, that just really got me.
That sounds like something that
Shit, I'm
would
gonna
come out in
start
the
reading
Silver Age.
Superman now.
Every issue of Jimmy Olsen, there was some like weird shit going on. Somebody got turned into something. There was an issue of Superman where Lois Lane went into a machine. I can't. She went into a machine and was turned into a black woman so that she could understand the struggle and like write about it in her newspaper. That's a real
Oh
thing that happened in the
no!
comics.
Oh god, that's awful. Why didn't Superman go in it?
Say what you will about Marvel, they've never, as far as I know, they've never pulled shit like that.
Oh my god, that is great.
That's
That's
a real thing that
terrible.
happened. It's fucking awful.
Zack Snyder, when will you adapt this?
When will you
Uh,
put Amy Adams in blackface? When will it happen?
Sergey at this point dubs himself Craven the Hunter, which I guess is his persona name. I don't
I
know.
guess so. I guess it is his persona. Yeah.
He attacks Spider-Man pretty quickly from here, tracks him, fights him, and proves to be more than an even match. It's a great fight sequence. This is the one that takes them through the
Yep.
Museum of Natural History. Great, gazelle statue, antelope statue knocking over stuff. Very on the nose, but uh,
Spider-Man throws a giant gorilla statue at him.
one thing I have in my notes that I want to point out is that I like the fight set pieces a lot more in this season than the first season. There's a lot of street fighting, a lot of nighttime street fighting in the first one. This season, multiple like museums, planetariums, the prop house with Mysterio. It all feels more out of the comics, I guess, like individual kind of like layers, and not even layers, so to speak, but like the history, natural history set pieces are great for a Craven fight. I don't know. It's really good this season.
Yeah, I want to say that this season has like given them sort of the free pass to like branch out and do like kind of weirder stuff and fight in like different locations and do all kinds of stuff that wouldn't that I don't know if like too scared is the right word, but
Mhm.
like they weren't willing to go that far in the first season.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of fun. They just get weird with it. It's great. In the
Yeah.
middle of this fight, uh, Peter receives a phone call from Liz asking him to come to the hospital. Uh, but his fight with Craven spills out into Central Park, and he slows Craven down with enough webbing to deal what he thinks is a knockout blow, but is briefly distracted. And when he turns back, Craven has disappeared.
He's
From
gone.
there, Peter decides to go to the hospital and attempt to comfort Liz. Everyone's kind of waiting to find out what's going on with Flash, how he's doing with like emergency surgery and all that. And he's wheeled out on a gurney, and she rushes over to see how he's doing. Everyone's, happy to see that he didn't like, flip from the anesthesia or something. I don't know. Uh, Craven awakens being tended to by Calypso in their limousine before their benefactor, the master planner, introduces himself over the phone and asks Craven a really dumb pun about how he feels about hunting in packs. We get
So
our
funny.
typical little episode close, like web in the sky thing, but I just gotta say, it straight up looks like cum to me. It looks bad. Like the white frozen webbing, it just looks gross. I don't know.
It's something.
I don't know. It just looks bad to me. I get the effect they were going for, but it doesn't read as snow. It looks gooey. I don't like it. But
Yeah, there's certainly more snow to look at
mhm.
when we get into the I think what episode is it? I think it's episode 3.
Yeah, I think it is,
Yeah.
which we are moving
It's
into as we
it's
speak.
something.
That takes us into, yes, episode 3, reinforcement. This is a really, really good episode. Um, it's approaching Christmas Eve, and Spider-Man is casing the Big Sky Billiard Hall, a hangout for street thugs and low-level criminals, looking for intel into Mysterio and where the equipment that he stole vanished to. He interrogates a bookie named Blackie Gaxton for a little while, and eventually learns that Mysterio was fronting for a new crime lord who has been hiring everybody from two-bit thugs, construction workers, all the way up. After him, Spider-Man catches sight of a man in an eye patch, aptly named Patch. Then a fun little bit there, great dialogue.
Good old Patch.
Patch escapes, but Spider-Man corners him real quick.
I'm glad to see Patch because he's an old, kind of vaguely obscure character from the Lee Ditko run. He's like a
Oh yeah,
weird informant that turns out to. It's like kind of pseudo spoilers, but who cares?
yeah,
He
whatever.
turns out to be Frederick Foswell from the Daily Bugle,
Mm.
in disguise on the street. It's fun that they're adding stuff, and it happens. I think in episode 6, there's sort of a similar kind of thing with Jameson when he gets he gets his powers briefly. It reminds me of another Lee Ditko issue that's kind of not
Mhm.
good, but it is it's fun to sort of go back and reference that.
Sure, yeah. Patch informs Spider-Man that Mysterio's boss is nicknamed the Master Planner. And Phineas Mason, who is watching from a hidden camera, informs the Master Planner that Spider-Man is closing in. The Master Planner instructs him to round up the usual suspects, those being Rhino, Kraven, Doc Ock, Sandman, Mysterio, Electro, and the Vulture. At Rikers Island Penitentiary, a prisoner inspection reveals Adrian Toomes is a hologram and Quentin Beck is an android.
Yeah,
Hate it when that happens.
yeah, like at the end of episode 1, they had snuck in a robot into prison. I don't know how
Mm.
they did that. They'd have to like put in the effort. Is it anatomically correct? Because they got to do like a cavity search or some
Yeah,
shit
they
like
made the
that.
robot squat and cough. They paid real special detail. As the prison is
Do you think
oh,
Quentin made his robot clone's dick bigger?
absolutely he did, yeah. And if not, like actually
Like,
he made an illusion to make it look that way.
gotta make sure it's packing more heat.
In case I ever actually go to prison, these guys need to know what, you know.
Who they're fucking with.
As the prison is sent into lockdown at this discovery, the guards discover that Sandman and the Rhino have escaped as well. We cut to Ravencroft Asylum with a super quick and why reference to Cletus Cassidy, right? They're I don't know if you caught that or not, but like at the
Yes.
beginning when they're doing therapy, the therapist is like, "That's great, Cletus," and they move away from some redheaded guy back to the action. But like,
Yeah, Cletus is just straight up there. I don't think Carnage is in this series.
absolutely not. No.
I remember reading some kind of article or something about how this series ended.
Mhm.
Well, like was canceled years before I ended up watching this show. And they talk about how like they wanted in season 3 to have Carnage in there. And it would have been interesting to see how they do Carnage because
Yeah,
Carnage is like a very R-rated backstory of that he's a
absolutely.
fucking serial killer.
Unlike here, maybe he was just like a criminally insane, I don't know, like credit card fraud guy. I don't know. We get no backstory. We get nothing. Just
It would
Cletus
have been interesting to
Cassidy
see.
in
It would have
group
been interesting to
therapy.
see.
But yeah, aside from a very brief glimpse at a character who will go nowhere and do nothing in this remaining of this show, Otto Octavius and Maxwell Dillon, Max Dillon even, don't call him that,
Yeah,
are
he's not
attending
Max, he's Electro. Get it right.
a group therapy session when Craven breaks in to free them. Electro very loudly and coldly denounces Otto, who seemingly has reverted back to his meek, mild, original personality, and Electro departs with Craven. Uh, I at this point in the show, before the twists and turns that follow in this episode, I was out loud just talking about how fucking bad I felt for Otto in this show.
Yeah.
I was thinking, man, they love to torture this guy on this show.
But now he's gone evil mode. So it doesn't he's yeah.
At the skating rink at Rockefeller Plaza, Peter and Liz are flirting while Gwen is kind of watching from the sidelines forlornly. Flash is attempting to skate with his super fucked up leg, which is just about the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, he's Flash Thompson. He doesn't really come up with smart plans.
Fair. Prompting Liz to rush to his side. And when Peter attempts to regain her attention during this, she like rebukes him in front of everybody.
Fuck you.
Back at the Master Planner's base, Mason introduces Craven and Mysterio to the other members. And the Master Planner, who appears as a very cartoonish silhouette on a TV screen, announces his intent to inaugurate a new age, that of the supervillain, by killing Spider-Man. Very,
That's immediately their plan. They're always like, we got to go kill Spider-Man first. And it's like, do you really have to? I mean, you can get a little crime done before Spider-Man shows up.
yeah. I
Like
really,
you could do enough to hold him off, and then get some crime done instead of having to just try and fight him the whole time, and then no crime gets done. It's very inconvenient.
no, fuck that. We're in the age of the supervillain now.
Something like that.
We've evolved beyond sticking up the convenience store on the bodega. Back at the skating rink, Gwen finally does confront Peter, telling him that she's gotten tired of waiting for a response from him, and that if he wants to go after Liz, she won't be his second choice. MJ shows up and kind of chides Peter for his indecisive nature, telling him that he has to make a choice and focus on what he wants. Sound advice from MJ always in this show.
Yes.
Peter's discussion with MJ is interrupted by the arrival of Electro and the Vulture, and we get a
Electro, who asks the classic question of, "Can Spider-Man come out to play?"
yes, great Warriors reference during the fight there.
Well, I always think of it as a reference to Raimi 1 when the
could be,
Goblin
absolutely.
says that on the phone. Can Spider-Man come out to play?
I wish I could have seen Defoe's face recording that. It's great.
God, fuck, it's so funny.
There's a great running line a bit throughout this fight. Peter has burnt his tongue on hot chocolate, making the quips come out just borderline unintelligible when they do. Very fun. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's really good. And one thing I want to make note of during this fight sequence that we have is like the animation is like super smooth.
Mm-hmm.
It's like popped up from time to time in the show. Like I can remember like when Spider-Man fucks up the Vulture's suit in like the very first episode. The animation on that is super smooth, but like this whole fight sequence is just like super like really smooth animation. It looks really really good, and I mean I can totally understand like because I have like friends who are artists,
Mm-hmm.
and I can totally understand why they wouldn't want to do it like that because it just takes too long. You have to draw so many more frames. But I
Right.
wonder like which specific animation studio did that because they did a really good job on this.
Yeah. The fight sequences, like you said, they're elevated this season. Whether they're mixing them around or the actual 2D, 3D effects of everything, it's I don't know. It's really really solid. Um, until like the Christmas tree falls later, and it's like jarringly like, oh, CGI for a second, but it's fine. Um, Taking MJ's words to heart, Peter manages to pin the Vulture beneath a giant Christmas tree. That, like I mentioned, real good stuff there. And he seals Electro in molten rubber, which I thought was fucked up, but if it
Yeah,
works.
get covered in goo.
That the show is really into goo.
This is a very goo focused program. A lot of goo involved, a lot of slime, a lot of slop, a lot of a lot of liquids, a lot of paste.
You could rattle those off really quickly to him. Uh, Peter is then ambushed by Sandman and the Rhino. But the fight goes real quick. He essentially tricks the Rhino into jumping onto the frozen ocean to come down to get him. Great little "I hate you" moment there.
Yeah, and he ends up freezing Sandman and shatters into a million pieces.
Yeah, fucked up but true. Used a fire,
which will happen again 2 episodes later, which is fucked up.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we'll get to that. That's really good. A lot of good Sandman moments in this season.
It just keeps happening.
The Rhino, crashes through the ice as well, begins to sink. We've got all of them taken care of. Spider-Man sees the Shocker and Dr. Octopus on the roof of a nearby skyscraper and attacks them only to discover that they're one of Mysterio's illusions and gets ambushed by Kraven. During this fight, all three of them, Spider-Man, Mysterio, and Kraven, uh, just absolutely fucking tear at each other. They go into a department store, a redacted department store, perhaps, that has nothing to do with an alleged Thanksgiving parade. Uh, Great little outlet fight sequence there, and it ends with Mysterio accidentally taking Kraven out with an exploding android meant for Spider-Man. Uh, I love that
Yeah,
ineptitude.
it's always fun. Like I said, fighting the Sinister Six is always is really fun because you get to have villains like accidentally beat the shit out of each other. It's in that
Hmm.
sort of divide and conquer 2-and-2 way. It's really good.
Yeah. And this is, I think, maybe the first episode where Peter like manages to like take on just about the entire gang and like have them put down for a bit instead of just running off and everything. I'd say he won most, if not all, of the fights he was in. Good stuff.
Yeah, and especially not this is the first time that he's done it that he's not controlled by the symbiote like he wasn't last time.
Hmm. Hmm.
And minus since Doctor Octopus is not here in this lineup this time, if you replace Doctor Octopus with Rhino, you have or Rhino with Doctor Octopus. I mean, you'd have the entire original Sinister Six from Annual One.
Hmm. Hmm. Fun stuff. Uh, Spider-Man interrogates Beck after all of this, who refuses to reveal anything, and the police arrive to arrest him. Back at the rink, Peter arrives and is berated by Gwen, who thought that he had been crushed by the tree, in a great little, oh god, he's fine, but I'm furious at him moment. Peter begins to apologize, only for the police to discover that the Vulture has vanished, along with everyone else. Back at the Master Planner's base, Mason informs him that the extractions are nearly complete, gathering up, all the fallen villains. And as at Ravencroft, Otto is dragged away screaming by his own disembodied tentacles, and this was like peak, oh god, poor Otto for me.
I can't believe you
So
got
fucking
duped by
bad for the fact. I
duped by a
know.
children's cartoon.
I absolutely should have seen this coming, considering he was the
How
only one. Yeah, but no, I did. I did. I was like, "Ooh, who's the master planner? What's going on here? It's fun."
how embarrassing!
Yeah, that's me. At
Merry
home,
Christmas.
Merry Christmas, asshole! It's Doctor Octopus. At home, Peter and Aunt May unwrap together a picture of Uncle Ben and reminisce about him for a while, capping off our little Christmassy episode here. And once again, that the time transition in this show is just great, from the October set pieces of the last season into this stuff. Really good. From there, we move into our fourth episode, Sheer Strength. Uh, we right off the bat, they don't even like fuck around with us for even like a terribly long amount of time. The master planner's Doc Ock. He's it's him, unless you're stupid like me and you couldn't piece it together. Uh, yeah,
Yep,
Doctor
that's
Octopus
how
is
that's how
the
it is in the
point.
comics.
Yeah, right. What a shock. Um, yeah, he unveils himself, and when Electro bemusedly asks why he didn't just escape with him and Craven, Octavius responds that deception was necessary to throw Spider-Man and Alex off. Uh, at Oscorp, Peter is meeting with Norman, who introduces him to Morris Bench, Oscorp's demolitions expert, and they're in the process of installing a wireless bomb to destroy an old abandoned tenement. Osborn tells Peter to get a good seat for the blast, but as Peter begins to leave, the bomb suddenly activates with only 30 seconds on the timer because Morris Bench is very inept, I guess. No, I'm
Ultimate
just kidding.
ultimate
It's
ultimate doofus
assassination.
Morris Bench.
But yeah, it maybe so, maybe an assassination attempt. Who knows? Spider-Man suddenly shows up and launches Osborn and Bench to safety as the bomb detonates. Norman does make a point to go, "What about Peter?" Which I don't know that he would have done if Harry was in the building. I actively made a note of that. I was like, he asks after Peter. Would he have done the same for Harry?
Probably not.
Harry, run a little faster. You're on the football team, for God's sake. Get down the stairs. Dr. Octopus and the Vulture are lamenting shortly after this about their failure to kill Dr. Osborn and Spider-Man. But the Vulture remarks that Octavius's invention, which allows him to hack into wireless, devices and control them the same way he does with his tentacles, was a success.
Yeah, he like Doc Ock has like become a technopath essentially, where he can like control machinery, which is like really cool, but also it's like this is like super overpowered for Doc Ock.
Yeah, he's Big Brother now. He is the master planner. Uh, Fun little stuff with his little like chip at the top of his fused spine, very Raimi. Um, Octavius proclaims that he already has control over most of New York City and intends to expand his influence across the entire world, while the Tinkerer, who he has here among his lair, notes some worrying power fluctuations during the initial test. Always happy to see the Tinkerer. Very they make jokes about it later where he's like no good in a fight. They just keep him around for the shit that he does do. Uh,
Yeah, it's like there's like a lot of it's like the fucking Sinister Eight. There's like so
yeah.
many motherfuckers here.
Well, I mean, you got to take down one Spider-Man. At a cafe, Mary Jane continues to play like behind the scenes matchmaker for Peter and Gwen, attempting to set them up on a date for New Year's Eve. But Flash and Liz arrive as Peter leaves to pick up their order, and Gwen laments that Peter is into Liz and not her. Very, they do a lot with the teenage emotion love triangle bullshit that Peter's always so entrenched in this show. I'm hoping that like pretty soon they can find a good footing to end it.
Peter's
But
problem is that he pulls too much. He
yeah,
fucking just destroys.
look out, ladies! I washed the black shirt.
Oh, I got my black shirt and my khakis on and my belt. Let's fucking go. Watch out.
Oh man. Having located Spider-Man's cell phone using its GPS, Octavius uses his device to wreak havoc on New York's wireless devices. He hacks satellites, he sends Midtown's police dispatch on all kinds of wild goose chases, uh, triggers a massive traffic accident right outside the cafe where Peter is. While everybody steps out to see what's going on, Electro shows up and stuns Gwen and
Yeah,
abducts
he
her.
he wa- he walks up
Vulture
behind
just
her and just like fucking tases her. It's really
yeah,
funny.
tases her in the back, and then the Vulture just picks her up by the shoulders and just flaps off with her.
Ultimate stealth mode.
Peter loses track of the Vulture, but tails Electro's van, eventually causing it to crash. The Vulture drops Gwen off and with Octavius, who picks up the opportunity here to call Captain Stacy from Gwen's phone, blackmailing him with his daughter as ransom to grant him access to the global access code stored at the Homeland Security New York City headquarters that would give him access to every computer in the world.
Yeah, this show suddenly becomes 24 for a second, and we have to go on like super international espionage to go to Homeland Security and shit.
Yeah, it's a pretty steep raise of the stakes this episode. Captain Stacy like has to commit treason to save his daughter, and guess what? He just fucking gets away with it.
Dudes rock.
I,
Let's
I
go.
mean, I mean, there are like 6 episodes left in this season. Presumably, at some point, we could get an episode of like the people versus Captain Stacy. But like,
He's
for
he's
everything he does in this
executed for
episode,
his crimes.
he just fucking gets away with all the shit we're about to talk about in this
He
episode. He
abs
just,
he, dudes
uh,
rock.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, they do. Captain Stacy initially refuses these demands, but when Octavius threatens his daughter's well-being, he does reluctantly agree. From there, Electro escapes, but Spider-Man captures Mason and threatens to throw him off the roof of a skyscraper if he doesn't tell him where Vulture took Gwen. Great little,
Yeah,
like, drop him twice moment.
yeah. I actually really like between this episode and the last episode. I really like how like Peter's gotten tougher with his interrogations. He's like, I'm not fucking around anymore.
Yeah, he's not quite like breaking glasses in people's hands yet or anything, but he threatens to make the third drop final.
Yeah,
which
he's getting better at this whole superhero thing.
for sure, good kid. This does convince Mason to talk, and as Captain Stacy infiltrates Homeland Security, Spider-Man infiltrates the Master Planner's underwater lair. Very, very cool set piece here.
In the nasty ass Hudson River.
Yeah, very, very fresh. Octavius dispatches Electro to deal with Spider-Man, while the Vulture provides a distraction for Captain Stacy by fucking shelling Homeland Security with his back turret.
Get fucked.
Just the pinnacle of subtlety. Um, Stacy infects Homeland Security's computers with a virus. It looks like it's on like an SD card that allows Octavius to increase his security clearance and enable him to access the area where the codes are stored. Meanwhile, Electro accidentally blasts one of the mainframes here, and the outburst from Octavius there when this happens prompts Spider-Man to figure out, how to wrap all this up. And he goads Electro into attacking, wildly and viciously and all over the place until the base begins to give in on itself and collapse, and all the equipment is fucking wrecked and ruined. During all of this, right before it's time to pull the metaphorical trigger, Captain Stacy demands to speak with Gwen, who has been knocked out by Electro. With the base falling apart and everything, Octavius decides to take matters into his own hands, his own tentacles maybe, and confronts Spider-Man himself. We get more destruction here. Spider-Man essentially tricks Octavius into destroying his servers, and routes the signals directly into his brain with no buffer from the satellite.
Yeah, he gets a big old headache.
He has to sever the connection like immediately to stop this flood of way over inundation of information.
So much internet porn.
Peter, I've seen things you wouldn't believe, Peter.
It's like fucking Roy Batty at the end of Blade Runner. I've seen things you wouldn't believe.
Octavius resignedly congratulates Spider-Man with a great little villain, "Oh, I know what must be done" speech before triggering the base's self-destruct and leaving in an escape pod, just straight up fucking abandoning Electro to die.
Get fucked.
Spider-Man attempts to escape with Gwen, but he is then pinned beneath a heap of rubble with water running all down his face and resigning himself to death. In a pretty fresh little moment here that I've never seen before.
Never seen this one before. It's all new to me.
But he figures if this be his destiny, realizing that Gwen, an innocent, would die as well, he musters his heroic resolve and heaves the rubble aside, taking not just Gwen but Electro as well before the base explodes into a second escape pod. Which, why is that there?
Well, there's like 8 guys that are supposed to be working here, so why not?
Yes,
you gotta have contingency plans.
I feel like if I was Doc Ock and the contingency was trap Spider-Man down here and blow him up, I feel like I would have launched all the pods when I went up.
Probably
sloppy shit, Doc Ock.
Can't budge it. It's so cold. Muscles stiff. Numb. This is it. Fought the good fight. Did my best. Even foiled Doc's plan. No one could ask any more of me. What am I doing? I can't give up. Not with Gwen depending on me.
I do have to say that during this whole I like this whole 4-episode arc in general. But the last part where the rubble falls on him and he does his little ASM 33 thing. It's I was kind of underwhelmed by it.
It moves pretty fucking quick. They don't spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, well, I guess I better die." He's like, "Oh, what am I saying?" And he just lifts it off him immediately. Like, there's not really any
Right.
struggle to it.
It
It's
goes pretty much as quickly as I described it. He essentially just says, "Oh shit, wait, Gwen," and just throws the shit off of him.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about this obviously later when we get to the Master Planner saga for our penultimate episode of the season. Uh, that whole sequence in the original comic is like half the comic.
Mhm.
That specific issue is like just that, and it's really really good because they take time, they develop his like mindset in that situation. Now his little miniature arc that he has there,
Mhm.
and even in something like Homecoming, which has a
Yeah,
similar situation. It's not 100% identical,
it's
but
it's
it's obviously takes a lot of inspiration from that moment. They do it a lot better because Tom Holland fucking acts his heart out in
oh
that
yeah,
moment.
that boy sounds hurt in that
It
scene.
is really, really good. And here, this is like this is like the first time this show has like ever really kind of disappointed me
It's
is
more
in
yeah.
how sort of quickly they get through that. And it's like, I wish you would have expounded on that more.
It's more just like a visual reference more than any kind of like adaptation of that moment. It just
Yeah.
happens to be during the Master Planner saga of this show. It's just there visually to be there.
Yeah. The only reason I had any like sort of more expectations on it is because it is in pretty much every other way, minus, Aunt May being sick, uh, a recreation of the Master Planner saga. And so, it was kind of a bummer that they would take the best part of that and just kind of,
Yeah,
eh, just half ass it. But, you can't win them all.
precisely. We're still batting close to 1,000 here.
Oh, yeah.
Octavius orders Vulture to retreat, and Captain Stacy crushes Octavius's little virus SD card after getting a phone call from Gwen telling him that she's safe. From here, everything's died down, gone back to as normal as it can. At the Parker household, it is a minute to midnight, and Peter attempts to call Gwen and speak briefly. But Liz Allen shows up at his doorstep and tells him that she and Flash are done for good and that she wants to be with him. As the ball in Times Square drops, Liz kisses Peter at the same moment Gwen is on the other end of the phone talking to nobody, asking what's going on. Classic Spider-Man shit. Heartbreaking.
Shit is getting wacky. We got a love triangle going on.
Whoa.
Oh, wah, 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 wah.
And we have our little end to our arc there for now, before moving on to the 5th episode, First Steps. Um, while web slinging through the city, Peter believes he catches a glimpse of Eddie Brock standing on a rooftop, but by the time he doubles back to check, Eddie is nowhere to be seen. The Sandman is robbing a jewelry store and is accosted by Spider-Man, as he's wont to be.
I feel like
The
it would be
two
really embarrassing to get robbed by sand. Just like you're working
Oh,
at this jewelry store and
absolutely.
then a bunch of sand comes through and takes away all of your inventory. Like, that'd be really embarrassing.
You gotta hope that that got caught on the security camera, else you're fucked.
You're just like, oh man, well, I'm gonna explain this to my boss. A bunch of sand came in and stole everything.
One thing I thought during this fight was like, God, the Sandman fills himself with like diamonds and gold bars and shit. That's gotta really aid his like punching ability, just slapping you around with diamond hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier to carry things when you can just shove shit into your body and it works out just fine.
He displays a lot of improved control over his power in this
Oh
fight.
yeah,
Uh,
Sandman goes kind of sicko mode this whole episode.
oh yeah, he pretty quickly like defeats Spider-Man. The police arrive and Sandman escapes down a drain pipe, but leaves behind pretty much all of the loot because of that. At school, Gwen glumly informs MJ that Liz and Peter are now a couple, uh, much to Sally's fury. Liz tells Sally to let her be happy, as, things in life are looking up now that her older brother Mark has returned from juvenile detention. Classic Spider-Man
Mm,
character, Mark.
well, we'll see. We'll see.
uh, Flash grumpily watches Liz, only to spot Shushan Wen, one of the students in his biology class.
who I looked it up. Shishan is original character, not from the comics or anything, just from this TV show.
I kind of got that vibe. I guess we need more of those, to be honest. There's pretty much been nothing but comic characters up to this point.
Well, I mean, it is adapted from a comic book, so
True,
there's not
true,
really much
true.
you can do.
It's always nice to have new stuff in there, though. I like that.
I like her what I've seen of her so far, and that just reminds me that on the New Adventures, the what is it, Spider-Man the new animated series, the MTV show that we're going to talk about later on in the season, there is another different new character in the show, and she's specifically a romantic interest for Peter,
Hmm. Well,
which
that'll
will
be
be
interesting.
interesting. It'll be interesting to see that.
Talk about for one episode and then never think about again.
Yep.
Flash invites Shishan to be his date at his birthday party coming up.
Imagine it'd be kind of weird to take a date to your birthday party.
For sure, especially somebody you've never spoken to. But this is
It's like, hey, you want to go on a date with me? Yeah, where are we going? My own birthday party.
you get to be the homecoming queen of my party. Peter continues to reflect over his possible Eddie sighting, and his spider sense goes off as he's grabbed from behind by Harry Osborn, who has returned from quote unquote Europe.
He's back.
And they briefly catch up, dudes rock. But as the class bell rings, Peter briefly has a little vision of Harry as the Goblin. You want to go to class with me, Peter?
Can you help me with my fucking algebra homework, Peter?
Great stuff. I really do love the Goblin design in this show, and poor
Yeah, it's
Peter,
fun.
great little Goblin PTSD moment there. Hammerhead is meeting with Sandman at the Big Sky Billiard Hall and offers him a chance to get his fabled big score while back at the school. The principal is introducing St. John Devereaux. Is that how you say his last name? The drama instructor, Devereaux. And announces that Captain George Stacy will be conducting a weekly police seminar. I have in my notes, noted treason committer George Stacy will be conducting a weekly seminar.
You gotta learn from the best.
Harry has some rephrasing to learn. He refers to everybody as a foursome at one point, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know how they do things in Europe, man, but you gotta not say shit like that here.
You guys are like kids. Like, come on, put yourself together.
Harry flirts with Gwen, inviting her to Flash's birthday party as his date, which Gwen accepts, kind of to get back at Peter. Harry cannot read the room and invites Liz and him on a double date. Which, would make no sense because Liz reveals that Flash hasn't invited her since, she's an ex. But somehow Peter has received an invitation and offers to take her, which, why would you offer that? Because that sounds horrible. But whatever.
I don't know. Who knows what goes on in the inner machinations of Flash Thompson's mind.
They really play up the sand in the mouth, sand in pockets angle of everything on this show. He has a little sand falling out of it when he pulls out the invitation. He's throughout the episode, Peter's always got sand on him.
It's very funny.
While web slinging that evening, Spider-Man spots Eddie yet again. But before Peter can confront him, the alarm at the museum goes off. And when he goes to investigate, he finds Sandman, who berates him for always meddling in his attempts to get rich. I really love their dynamic in this episode. They really do play up the fact that they fought each other a dozen times at this point in this episode.
Yeah.
It's a great...
I think it's really funny that Eddie's just walking around town just to fuck with Peter.
Yeah,
He's like, yep,
yeah.
I'm here. What's going on?
It is great. It's great. Spider-Man criticizes him for wasting his powers and potential on the same petty crimes that Flint Marko committed. And Sandman appears to undergo a little, a turn for a second, oh, are you serious? I could be a big hero like you? But of course, he's just, fucking with him and smashes him up some more during all this.
And then also in the fight, we see, Sandman disguises himself as, a painting on the wall.
Yeah, an Egyptian relief.
Yeah, and then he eats him. He like straight up like vores Spider-Man. It's so fucked up.
Absolutely.
We got Personas, we got Vor. It's like the DeviantArt show.
Jesus, yeah, they let one of the Totally Spies animators work on this.
Oh, good God. Next,
Uh,
there's gonna be some kind of feet thing. I know.
I'm Spider-Man's greatest nemesis, the Foot.
The Foot.
Sandman, trumps him up in the middle of this with great power speech and just fucking leaves. Uh, the
Get
next
fucked.
the next morning, Harry, Gwen, and Liz pick Peter up in a goblin green convertible, which
Oh
Harry's
yeah.
parents must have got him because they love to fucking traumatize him,
Get goblinized.
Our son, he got addicted to green goblin juice. Make sure we get him the same color car just to fuck with him. They pick Peter up to head to Flash's house for the party. Flash's mother turns out to be the one who gave Peter the invitation, revealing that he and Peter were once childhood friends, best friends even. Much to Flash's horror and the shock of everybody, Flash's clique, Gwen, Harry. We even get a fun little explanation of the nickname with like a naked baby picture.
Yeah. These last three episodes, 5, 6, and 7, they're like really, really fun with Flash in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they really do a lot with this character here.
And there's something that goes on here and in the next episode as well, where they have these like little intercut moments like between scenes of
Oh
like
yeah,
characters talking to the camera. In this episode, they're like it's Flash's mom recording a video for Flash's birthday. And the next episode, it's them reading Shakespeare that has to like relate to what's going on in the episode. And I really, really like it.
yeah, absolutely. It really ties everything together, keeps it on theme. We get a great little scene at Rockaway Beach, where Sandman scares some bullies off from a little girl building sandcastles. Hammerhead shows up and kind of chides him, calls him out for his behavior, helping little girls, and gives him his cut, his reduced cut of the payment for the stolen museum exhibit stuff. Sandman complains about the paltry amount left over from the cuts Tombstone and Dr. Octopus took. But Hammerhead tells him of a way to stop a nearby oil tanker so that the big man can rob it. Sandman.
And one thing about that Stan Castle scene is it reminds me of a deleted scene. I don't know if we talked about it in the episode for Spider-Man 3. But there's like a deleted scene where Sandman goes to like try to like see what his daughter's doing and like disguises himself as a sandcastle.
No,
It's fun. I like that.
It's fun. Sandman assimilates like the entire beach and immobilizes the ship with like turning himself into like a mobile sandbar, essentially.
Yeah.
At Flash's party, Peter believes he spots Eddie Brock again, but Sandman's attack of the tanker forces him to postpone investigating this. At the beach, Hammerhead watches Sandman and Spider-Man fight while his divers begin to drain the tanker of oil. Sandman releases his hold on the tanker to pursue Spider-Man, causing the drainage pumps to detach and spill oil into the ocean.
So it's something that's never brought up ever again.
Yeah, right? Like, you think Jameson would have a fucking field day with that.
Massive oil spill. But yeah, Sandman goes fucking big mode.
Oh, yeah, he begins assimilating the ocean floor to grow even larger. Their fight tears the ship apart and ignites the oil floating on the water, and Spider-Man catches what he believes to be a glimpse of Venom watching from the shore.
Venom!
Enabling Sandman to finally get a hold of him. As the tanker begins to go the way of the Titanic, Sandman notices crew trapped inside and rescues them. Peter tries to stop him at first before realizing what he's doing.
Good guy, Sandman.
Sandman protests that he was only ever in it for the money and he never meant for innocents to get hurt, eventually grabbing and throwing Spider-Man to safety as well. The tanker combusts and self-destructs, and Sandman wraps himself around it, and the resulting explosion turns him to glass. And Spider-Man sadly watches while Sandman's glazed body crumbles. laments his former foe's heroic sacrifice, and web swings away before Sandman materializes on the beach, smiling all smug before fading into the wind. And it's like Peter literally froze and killed him like a week ago, you know? Do you think he was actually dead?
Yeah. But I like to see like good guy Sandman. I think it's fun.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, heart of gold. To put his worries to rest, Peter checks the construction site where he buried the symbiote in concrete and is relieved to find it completely undisturbed. As he leaves, Eddie Brock, dressed in it reminds me of the Raimi human spider suit a lot. It's like
Yeah,
his
he like
that for Venom.
I like the idea of Eddie like sitting in like his wherever he lives now since he left his dorm. Just like spending like an afternoon making this suit with like construction paper and like markers. It's like I make the suit.
This is my symbiote, and it's just black sweatpants and a sweatshirt with like cricket vinyl on it.
Anyway, yeah, like him following Peter to go find the symbiote in a canvas bag.
Great.
It's a really like absolutely devil mode.
Steps out of the shadows and sarcastically thanks Peter for leading him straight to the symbiote, and pulls out a comical cartoon sledgehammer and begins excavating, ending the 5th episode. Taking us into episode 6, Growing Pains. This is a weird one, but it's fun. A trio of masked thugs are fleeing down an alley with duffel bags of stolen goods before they're accosted by Spider-Man? Question mark.
Yeah,
A
it's
muscular Spider-Man in a black and white costume.
it's Spider-Man, but he looks like super like even more built than Spider-Man already was. It's
When,
really funny.
when the police arrive, this mysterious black Spider-Man attacks them as well, before making off with the thieves' duffel bags. The following morning at ESU's laboratory, the Connors, J. Jonah Jameson, Peter, and Gwen all collectively watch as Colonel Jameson grows 7 feet tall and inhumanly strong. Which, when this first happened, made me go, "Did I miss a fucking episode?"
Yeah, he just gets big all of a sudden.
It's very out of nowhere. Like
It's a really I keep
this is
saying
a,
this, but it's really funny.
this is a fine episode and it's a weird episode, but like I feel like the pacing of this one scene could have standed to be rewrote a little bit. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
Gets big, and they're like, "What's going on, huh? Why is he big?" Um, Dr. Connors reveals that Colonel Jameson was infected by alien spores that had been living on the symbiote, and
Not not the symbiote. Yeah, they have to specify that it's not the
Mhm.
symbiote. It's spores that were attached to the symbiote,
Right,
which is it's
which they
partially I think based on the last issue that Steve Ditko worked on for Spider-Man,
mhm.
which is a not very good story called Just a Guy Named Joe, where a guy like finds spores in a meteor and just grows big and becomes like a superhero and then fights Spider-Man. Uh
Way to
it's
go.
so it's like such a weird thing to introduce out of nowhere.
Yeah. And you would think there's any kind of logical connection, like, well, does Peter have brain spores? But they just never mention it. Whatever, who cares? Is there going to be a point in the middle of an episode where Peter grows 7 feet tall? Who knows?
Who knows?
The spores were altering his body to be better suited to a high mass, high gravity environment. Um, Jonah angrily demands that Dr. Connors cure his son, but Dr. Connors states the only thing they have that seems to affect the spores is electricity, and gives Colonel Jameson a specialized suit to monitor his condition, to like better adjust him to our Earth conditions with his new physiology.
Yeah, they give him the Jupiter suit, they call it, because like they think the
Mhm.
spores came from Jupiter.
From some kind of environment like Jupiter, yeah.
Yeah, like Jupiter.
Jameson protests that the Jupiter suit makes his son look like a superhero, but Dr. Connors informs him the suit is specifically designed to suppress the spore's activity and monitor the colonel's vital signs. but also warns that the spores may eventually affect his personality as well. Pretty ominous. Uh, at Midtown High, Flash confronts Shashan and asks why she didn't come to his party, and she rebukes him with, the truth of why the fuck would I come to your party? Totally unimpressed by his immaturity and arrogance. Hopefully we see some Flash growth soon. Poor guy. Peter begins to suggest to Jonah that Colonel Jameson embrace his new powers, but is interrupted by a phone call from the Bugle detailing the Black Spider-Man's attack on the police. Jubilant, Jonah declares that he finally has all the evidence he needs to take Spider-Man down for good, and then suggests that his son be the one to bring Spider-Man to justice, flipping through a couple of names before landing on Colonel Jupiter for his son. I like to consider myself pretty well versed in this shit. Had no idea Colonel Jupiter was a thing.
I didn't know either, honestly. I thought it was taking more cues from just a guy named Joe and then just putting it onto Colonel Jameson. But yeah, I didn't know that was a thing.
He's here.
You learn something new every day.
That evening, Spider-Man goes hunting for his dark doppelganger and notices an out-of-control armored car with a webbed-up windshield. Before Spider-Man can rescue the driver, who accuses him of being the attacker, he's grabbed from behind by a web from Venom, who taunts him for a good while. Spider-Man attempts to fight back, but Venom simply tosses him into a fuse box, knocking it into the fuel spilled by the crashed car. The resulting explosion then sets an apartment on fire, and the smoke is seen by Colonel Jameson, who decides to play hero. Venom retreats as John arrives and introduces himself to Spider-Man as Colonel Jupiter. They work together to clear out the apartment complex, and when the armored car's driver singles Spider-Man as the one who started the fire, Colonel Jupiter offers to help Spider-Man explain his innocence to the police, but that would require the risk of being forced to reveal his secret identity. So Spider-Man refuses this and decides to take off, having to briefly overpower Colonel Jupiter to do so. Which kind of
Colonel Jupiter, being a fascist pig, is like, no, you have to tell them, and he gets really mad. And
that's what we were taught in space: is that you have to.
In space school, this is what they teach you.
There's a point where Colonel Jupiter makes some crack about like being able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, and it's like, are you legally allowed to do that?
It's like in Spider-Verse when Spider-Ham says, "That's all, folks." Is he allowed to say that like legally?
Towing the line, as always.
And one thing about that fire sequence, it just reminds me of the fire in Spider-Man 2, which what a good movie.
Yeah, very good stuff. I swear to God, at points, Colonel Jupiter makes like $6 Million Man sounds, like that da-da-da-da-da-da-da sound when he's like jumping or something.
Yeah, it sounded like the $6 Million Man, yeah.
So between that and the Godzilla sound I swear I heard in the earlier episode, it's like, geez, they're really hitting the Google sound effects free download bar. Later, at school, Gwen agrees to become Harry's girlfriend, fed up of being jealous of Peter and Liz. Flash corners Peter and demands that he help him win over Shashan, and Peter recommends joining the drama club, where auditions are taking place for an upcoming Shakespeare production.
Oh, yeah.
As John watches a news broadcast on Venom's crime spree and muses on Spider-Man's innocence, or maybe lack thereof, he's attacked by Venom under the guise of the Black Spider-Man, leaving him enraged as the spores begin to affect his personality. Meanwhile, happening during that, Jonah demands that Captain Stacy issue a warrant for Spider-Man's arrest, demanding to know why he isn't arrested already. And then better yet, he should deputize his son and let him do the job, because that's how it works, you know.
And Captain Stacy like puts in like actual detective work and is like, these are like, obviously the builds are completely different, the suits look different.
The fighting style is completely different.
The fighting style is different. Yeah, it's like Well, it's kind of crazy that he's using like actual detective work to defend Spider-Man. That's really cool.
Yeah, Captain Stacy fucking rules in this show.
Yeah, dude's right.
Jameson wants to brush aside all the evidence, but Captain Stacy reminds him, and this is what puts Jonah in his place, of what happened the last time the Bugle falsely accused Spider-Man of being a criminal, with the rare retraction he had to print.
Oh yeah,
Jameson
when Black Cat stole the Zoo Books Tiger poster.
Jameson receives a phone call from his son informing him of the attack, and Jameson tells his son to wait until the police determine whether the real Spider-Man is responsible or not, in a very rare, normal and cool moment for Jonah. John, who is under the influence of the spores, refuses to listen and states that he intends to put a permanent end to Spider-Man, who he then finds and attacks. Spider-Man was out looking for Venom, and then we move into the planetarium fight sequence. Probably my favorite fight of this episode of this series of episodes we are covering on this episode of the podcast. Definitely my favorite fight sequence. I'm a sucker for Venom. I like Venom fights. I like everything that we saw earlier with the various iterations of the Sinister Six, but there's something about this goofy set piece where they're fighting that I really love.
Yeah, in their big science museum. It's fun. Yeah, I like it,
Spider-Man
especially
fighting.
at the way that he
Yeah.
finishes him off, where he brings him in this like gigantic cavernous room with two big what are those called, the big things with the silver
Van de
balls on them
Graaff
that
generators.
that like generate electricity, and he
Mhm.
like puts him in the middle and just zaps him like a bug, and he shrinks down to normal size.
Yeah, it's just something about Spider-Man and this big goofy Buzz Lightyear looking motherfucker just fighting on giant planets. It's a lot of fun.
It's a big dumb Silver Age story. I like it.
Absolutely, that's exactly what it feels like. They trash the planetarium during the fight. Spider-Man remembers what Dr. Connor said about the spores being weak to electricity, as you said, and Colonel Jupiter is then lured into the giant Van de Graaff generator cave and is hit with 2 million volts, purging the spores from his system. John, who had been driven insane by the spores, is committed to Ravencroft, leaving Jonah heartbroken and broken up over Spider-Man, quote unquote, destroying his son. At school, past that, Mr. Devereaux posts the cast sheet for A Midsummer Night's Dream with Harry, MJ, Glory, Kenny, and Shashawn all getting the parts that they were hoping to get, with Flash getting nothing. Outraged that he wasn't given a role, which interrupts Peter's brooding over Venom in the hall. He's doing a little like soliloquy in his head that's interrupted by, all that.
As he normally is.
At the Bugle, Jameson is furiously blaming his son's condition on Spider-Man. And in the crux of the episode, to Peter's horror, Venom abruptly leaps through the window and announces to everybody in the building that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, ending the episode.
Oh yeah.
I could not believe that they really just went for it there,
It is. It's crazy, and it's really funny that in the next we can just might as well just segue into the next episode.
Right.
It's really funny that the whole Daily Bugle team like takes this fucking sharp teeth, monstrous tongue, big black slimy alien immediately at face value. Like, yep, we totally believe you. Yep, we're gonna run this story.
About that? Yeah. Before we do fully move into the final episode of the podcast tonight, I wanted to mention there's a quip from the fight with Colonel Jupiter where Peter refers to him as Colonel Stupider, and that actually made me laugh so hard I cried. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I just it really got me. I don't know.
It's funny.
But yes, our final episode. Venom has announced the identity of Spider-Man as Peter Parker to everybody. And in the aftermath of this event, Jameson has asked Nedley to interview everyone Spider-Man contacted, as well as close friends of Peter's as well. Robbie sends Peter home, telling Jameson that he thinks Peter's just a kid, but they also have the potential next day's front page. Peter Parker is Spider-Man. The following day, Harry tells Peter that Ned interviewed his father, while Flash continues to flirt with Shashan and unsuccessfully attempt to convince Mr. Devereaux to give him a part in the play. Captain Stacy is conducting a really timely seminar on identity theft, and Ned interviews the Connors, who initially laugh at the idea of Peter being Spider-Man, until they realize that it being true would explain numerous instances, and ultimately refuse to comment on the matter, which in my head pretty much solidifies them as knowing, I guess.
Yeah. One thing I do like, going back a little bit, I really like the idea of Captain Stacy, just even for this short, brief time being at Peter's school. I think that's a really interesting story beat.
Oh yeah. Well, especially with everything
It's
that's happened to Gwen in the last few episodes, for sure.
yeah, it's cool.
At ESU's lab, Eddie Brock makes his prodigal son return,
Oh my
much
god.
to Connor's and Gwen's delight. Very, very arrogant entrance. I'm back. I know I've vanished and everyone thought I was dead, but you love me. Here I am.
Yeah, and Peter and him end up having a kind of like a heated little moment right there before Peter is like trying to get Gwen out of there.
Mhm.
But oh my god, the people listening to the podcast won't be able to see it, but I'll probably end up posting it on Twitter, so you'll be able to see it there on our Twitter at Spidey Signals. I'm gonna post it in the Discord right now. Eddie makes this fucking face that is so funny. Like he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna fucking come after you."
Yeah, no, I absolutely remember that. He looks like Brock Sampson in that picture.
It's so he makes like the doofiest. He's like,
Oh my
yeah.
god, it's
It's
really
so
funny.
stupid. I love it so much.
It's like for one frame too. Like he makes a normal-ish face, and then it's just that for a second, and then it's gone.
And he does this little stupid grin. I love it. It was like as one of his eyelids is closed more than the other. It's like
If you didn't already have a thumbnail picked out, maybe that should be it.
I don't think that's gonna be it, but I'll think about it.
Eddie accepts Martha's offer of his old job back, which, Peter went and did some stuff and lost his job. Eddie just fucking disappeared, but oh well, you're back. I guess you can have your job. Fuck you, Eddie.
Yeah, just like fuck this guy.
In a private discussion with Peter, laments that the Bugle is taking their time with the scoop. That oh hey, they haven't told your big secret yet, bud. Peter, in so many words, tells Eddie to fuck off and leaves with Gwen to go meet with Harry and Liz at a diner, only to be confronted by a horde of paparazzi. There's a fun little moment where one of them asks, "Does Spidey go invisible?" And in the back of my head, I'm like, "Well, he does now." Haha. But
Ha 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 ha.
I think they even make a joke like that in Spider-Verse, where they're like, Spider-Man doesn't turn invisible. It's not a thing he does. Peter and Gwen hide in a heart-shaped sculpture, but they have a little romantic almost kiss moment, which is interrupted by Harry calling Gwen to inform her that he and Liz are waiting for them. Great timing there. Peter opts to pass on lunch, and later that evening accosts Eddie as Spider-Man. He asks Eddie if he realizes that he's putting everyone in danger, but Eddie, transforming into Venom, sneers to him that he can't wait to teach Peter's friends, or to watch Peter's friends and family turn against him and teach him the lesson, that he felt he had to learn.
Yeah, he's Eddie here in this episode is like super like devious. Like he's not just like super dumb, mindless. Like I'm gonna kill you and also kill all your friends. He's like I'm gonna ruin your life. And then later on, he ends up stealing the gene cleanser from the ESU lab, and he's like, "I'm going to reveal your identity. I'm going to make you drink this sauce that takes away all your powers. Then I'm going to kill all your friends, and then I'm going to kill you." And it's like that's so fucked up. I love it.
He's fucking evil. He's
so evil.
Venom can be devious, and they really got that right with this take on the character. It's not my favorite Eddie Brock, but it's a great Venom. It's a phenomenal Venom. They fight, and Venom defeats Spider-Man and pins him to the ground in front of the paparazzi. Spider-Man breaks free, but Venom taunts him by asking the crowd that if he wasn't Peter Parker, he wouldn't be so disinclined to show his face. Spider-Man goads Venom into punching him hard enough to knock him onto the roof of ESU, enabling him to escape. But yeah, great sequence there. God, I love Peter secret identity stories, and this is a great take on it.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's a really fun one. And the moment when Peter walks through the school, when everybody's like trying to like get like asking questions and like newspaper reporters and stuff, just reminds me of the fucking trailer for No Way Home. I'm
Ooh,
excited for that movie.
it's gonna be something. We got
It's gonna
what,
be
like
something.
give or take 2.5 months left.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly looking at it through weeks because that's
Sure,
how we
yeah.
have this series schedule. We've only got
Yeah.
about 11 weeks left.
Yeah, sounds about right. Cannot wait. It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be exciting.
At Midtown High, Peter is glumly contending with the speculation that, everybody is hurling at him, like you mentioned, in the halls and everything, while Eddie steals a vial of gene cleanser from the Connors lab, which that shit just, no one pays attention. Everybody's taking gene cleanser. Flash is interviewed by Ned and tells him that anyone could dress up as Spider-Man, and to prove his point, puts on a Spider-Man costume. However, a pair of thugs see him in his weakened, broken-legged state and decide to take advantage of this and try to beat the shit out of him. Peter decides it's time to admit some truths and arrives in time to save Flash from the thugs. With this, Venom attacks him, webbing him to a car, and announcing his intent to depower Peter after unmasking him, this whole devious plan of his,
Going
leaving
evil
him
mode.
unable to protect himself or his loved ones from the inevitable retribution that Venom is going to wreak on him. Venom,
He's just so fucking like devious, absolutely devilish.
A sad little masked superhero. Soon to have no mask and no super. Recognize this gene cleanser. After your identity's revealed, we'll pour it down your throat. Then we'll sit back and laugh while all your enemies attack Peter Parker. Leaving you powerless to defend yourself or the ones you love.
Venom peels the mask off of Spider-Man, but Peter flips the car over to keep his face hidden and eventually manages to snatch the mask back. Their brawl continues into the school, where Venom pins him to the wall of the science lab. Gwen appears and yells at Venom to stop, distracting him long enough for Spider-Man to break away. Some acid gets splashed on the symbiote. Very cool sequence there. A lot of, little tendrils squealing and squirming away.
Yeah.
And then exploding after being ignited. Venom gets ignited and, there's a little explosion there. Long enough for Peter to get a few hits in. A baseball bat gets grabbed at one point and it's mixed into the fray. Just great fight sequence here. A good
baseball bat that he
Spider-Man-
takes and like clangs against lockers to like make
Mhm.
sound to fuck with Venom.
Yeah, really good stuff. I love a good fight at school with this. Another great set piece. It's all about.
I literally also wrote in my notes, love a good school fight.
Wow, two guys with the same name and the same brain talking about Spider-Man.
Exactly.
An enraged Venom chases Spider-Man across the entire school and to the gym's locker room, where Flash is sulking after his failed attempt to convince the reporters that Peter isn't Spider-Man. Flash distracts Venom for long enough for Spider-Man to swipe the gene cleanser and stuff it down his throat. Really gnarly little sequence there. Tips the whole thing down.
Yeah, he just fucking jams it in there. And then I don't know how this works with a symbiotic relationship, but the gene
Right.
cleanser just makes the symbiote separate and go down a drain.
I internally rationalized it as maybe it reset Eddie to his defaults before the symbiote liked him,
I guess
know.
something like that.
Something like that. As the symbiote peels away from him and oozes down a drain into the sewers, Eddie desperately forgets the events of the last few weeks and begs Peter Spider-Man to help him get it back. Just absolute, not withdrawals, but like maybe withdrawals, just immediate dependency. He needs it back.
Yeah.
Peter tells his former friend that he can finally let go of his hatred, but Eddie glumly states the symbiote only loves him for the hatred. Great little Venom moment there.
Yup.
As he is carted away in a stretcher meant for Ravencroft, Eddie swears that he will always be Venom, and once the symbiote returns to him, they will destroy Spider-Man once and for all. Mr. Devereaux approaches Flash and tells him that after witnessing Flash's attempt to help Spider-Man, he's reconsidered and decided to cast him as Nick Bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream, leading to a very cartoonish Flash with a jackass head for a few seconds scene there. Just more
It's
cartoony
something.
than this cartoon has ever been. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really weird, but it's funny.
Flash attempts to ask Shisham for some private rehearsal time, and she tells him that he has the part nailed. When Miles Warren notices the stolen vial of Gene Cleanser, he uses it as a final straw type announcement to announce that due to the Connor's shoddy security record, he will request to have management of the lab turned over to himself, ignoring Martha's requests. If she has any complaints, she can take it up with the fucking 45 in his pocket, I guess. At the Daily Bugle, Ned concludes that if Peter isn't Spider-Man, rather that Peter is not Spider-Man, no if there, Peter is not the Spider-Man based on his investigation. And Peter silently thanks Flash for, the everything that he did to help contribute to the Peter isn't Spider-Man brigade. Peter Riley comments on the Daily Bugle's morning paper that proclaims his innocence, but that Spider-Man is still at large. While
Yeah,
we get
again, this has some really fun Flash moments. This whole episode.
Oh yeah,
And I want to jump back really quick to the
Yeah.
scene where Venom pins Peter against that car. I love that nobody really cares that he's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you," and everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, okay, whatever, it works."
Yeah. He didn't pull out his scimitar, so no one took him seriously.
Everybody's very nonchalant about this.
That's like the third straight up death threat against Peter, between like the impale him on your horn and then the scimitar and then I'm gonna murder you in front of everybody, Spider-Man. Nobody helps.
It just keeps happening.
We get some shots of the symbiote slinking through the sewers as well. And past that, at the criminology seminar, Captain Stacy states that while he initially saw Spider-Man's heroics as nothing more than vigilantism, if the wall-crawler's true identity was to be revealed, then everyone he ever cared about would be in constant danger, concluding that rather than using the mask to hide, Spider-Man is using it as a way to protect those he cares for, asking Peter, the only fucking person in the room, if he agrees. Captain Stacy leaves, and I might be dumb, but I'm pretty sure Captain Stacy straight up is like, "Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, you're Spider-Man."
Yeah,
All
and
right.
it's interesting because that's in that classroom, but Peter's like the only person there. I was like, why is he just talking to him all by himself? It's certainly something.
Yeah. This wraps up the 7th episode of the 2nd season of the Spectacular Spider-Man.
Oh yeah,
Good stuff.
good stuff. Alex, do you you have any fun facts for these 7 episodes?
I don't have any for these specific 7. I am going to consolidate all of my season 2 trivia for next week's episode, just for the sake of having it all in one spot together, if that makes sense.
I see. All right. So then what are your sort of overall thoughts about these first 7 episodes?
Really solid. The Master Planner arc was a fun surprise. I love anything to do with, a good Sinister team up. The Colonel Jupiter stuff was a little out of left field for me. Again, admittedly being, a pretty invested comic book / Spider-Man guy. It's not something I was familiar with, to the point where I was like, Jesus, is this show making this up? And I had to Google it, but it's always fun to learn something, I guess. To access a weird side character like that and bring him into the fray. That's how a lot of fan favorites get made, I guess. But I don't know if anybody's favorite is Colonel Jupiter, but it is what it is. I enjoyed these episodes a lot. It's the great makings of a great first half of a season of TV. I am really saddened to see some of these arcs go the way they have, because I feel like we're seeing a lot of stuff for the last time. Like, I don't imagine they're going to bring Eddie back again. I imagine everything's done with Venom from this point on, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, something tells me that Eddie's like not coming back for the rest of the show.
Right. I'd be surprised if we saw Sandman again, to be completely honest with you. I get the feeling we're going to be seeing a lot of characters' final appearance and not even realizing it.
Yeah,
I think the Goblin is back in the second half of the season, but I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he is. I'm pretty sure he's coming back.
Yeah, whether that's Harry or not, I guess will be the twist. But that's to be seen.
Whether it ever was Harry.
Ooh. I'm very, very much looking forward to the second half of this. The first half set a really high bar. It didn't even set a high bar. It cleared the same high bar that the first season did.
Yeah.
Like I said in last week's episode, and probably the week before that, there's a lot of hype around this show. And when a show gets canceled in its prime or before it can really take off, there tends to build this fan base of people that gets so caught up in the fact that it was gunned down in its prime that overrides how good it actually was. I don't mean to point fingers or anything, but like, I used to be that guy with Firefly, and then I turned like 15 and I stopped. But like, yeah, sometimes good things end and they end too soon, but that's fine. Or because if they didn't, we'd be on season 15 of the Spectacular Spider-Man and it would suck. I'm not happy that as good as this is, we're now looking down the barrel at the end of it. But that just stands as a testament to the quality of the show. I'm like I said, really truly looking forward to the second half and seeing how it all ends. I wouldn't be horribly averse to the idea of them bringing it back someday, but it would have to be under like the super right conditions. You'd have to have the right creative on it, and honestly, maybe when the focus is less on like the cinematic aspect of Spider-Man right now. I feel like Spider-Man fatigue is a very real thing.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to work through, especially in this podcast where we've got a lot of stuff going on. Mm-hmm. But I'm still really enjoying this show so far.
No, it's
like
great,
I said, I did have a bit of a problem with the way that they handled the master planner stuff at the end. But overall, this show has continued its level of quality, and I'm excited to see where these last 6 episodes will take us. And I'm ready to be really upset that they were not able to complete these storylines and finish these threads that they wanted to pick up on. And I'm not going to end up being one of those guys where it's like, oh, bring back the show. It's like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be one of those great what could have beens thing.
Yeah, I haven't finished it yet. Neither of us have, but I do think once we're done here, I'm gonna invest in my own physical like DVD set of this show just to have it. I really like it. It's something I want to show to people.
It's good.
Yeah. It's
something tells me they haven't put it out on Blu-ray, but
no,
I wish they would have.
I'll burn my own Blu-ray discs of DVD quality material and cry myself to sleep at night with it.
Something like that. All right. That's our show. Thank you so much for listening. If you've got a question or a comment that you want us to read on next week's episode, be sure to send it to us at our email address, spideysignalspodcast@gmail.com. Or you can shoot us a DM on our Twitter, @SpideySignals. Next week, we're going to finish off our discussion of this television program and talk about the last 6 episodes of The Spectacular Spider-Man. So until then, stay responsible. Bye.
Happy Halloween, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Happy Hanukkah.